everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and today I just finished watching Evil Dead Rise, the 5th entry in the Evil Dead franchise, not counting the TV show. And obviously, canon-wise, I believe this is on its own, but we'll talk about that. Maybe, maybe not. And yeah, this movie I have been really looking forward to. I am a fan of the Evil Dead franchise, similar to the Scream franchise. This is one that I believe every entry has its merit, you know, even like they're all so very different, but they each have their merit. And I am happy to say that I did enjoy this movie, but it is very different than what I was kind of expecting. So let's just jump right into it. So the Evil Dead franchise, and I feel like I have to give a little bit of a background or to kind of explain what's going on here. So on the surface, this movie follows the same principle as, you know, all the rest of the movies, right? Like there's a book and someone reads from it, or they at least, you know, they play audio of the the inscriptions being written. They're all like in Latin and stuff, right? And it's your typical thing where it's like, well, demons show up and they start possessing people, and it's bloody and it's gory and people are dying and all kinds of craziness happens, and you have to find a way to defeat them, right? And that's basically the premise of every single Evil Dead. However, they all are very different. So the original Evil Dead movie, I don't even know what year that was. I want to say it was like either late 70s, early 80s, somewhere around there. And of course, those were the Sam Raimi original trilogy of Evil Deads. The first one was very, very, very low budget. It is like the definition of a low budget horror movie. It's like the prime example. And of course, it's just your standard bunch of friends go to a cabin in the woods. Someone reads the Latin that they shouldn't be reading, and demons start showing up and possessing people. And it's, you know, obviously everything about it is really cheap looking and dated, but it's got that sort of like, it feels very real because of that. In the like, you know, there's no CGI here. It's all very low budget. It's like it's got that sort of raw energy to it, you know. So it's just a fascinating thing to kind of look at, even if it's obviously, you know, very dated in comparison. And then something interesting happened with Evil Dead 2, where instead of it being or trying to be like a straight up horror movie, there is still, you know, a lot of horror elements. It's still really gory and blood and all that stuff, but it goes for like this zany, over the top comedic type feel, you know, where it's like, and it is, you know, again, here we go again, it's the prime example of a horror comedy, which a lot of movies have tried to pull off. You know, you kind of have your Happy Death Days and stuff like that, which, like, horror comedy, it's not an easy thing to do, but it can be done. And this is like Sam Raimi's like the king of that, where it's like it's kind of cheesy and corny, but it's also kind of funny, but it's also kind of horrifying, because the stuff they're showing you is horrifying, but the stuff they're saying sometimes is hilarious. And it's like, well, what is happening? You know, it's that really weird vibe that not everyone can get into, but it really works. And then Army of the Dead, or no, Army of Dead. What was it? Army of the Dead, right? Anyways, Evil Dead 3, whatever. Evil Dead 3, that is the one that just went full on spoof comedy. You know, everything's kind of cartoony, and it's, you know, he leaned even further into the jokey side of things, right? And the reason all this context is important is because in 2013, we had an Evil Dead reboot. And that Evil Dead reboot went full horror, took itself entirely seriously. There's nothing jokey about it, and they fully go for it. Like every, you know, horrifying, you know, body mutilation, you know, it's like Saw, but more imaginative than some of the Saw movies, you know. So like they fully go in on everything that you can imagine horribly happening to demon possessed people, right? And that movie, I love that movie. It's amazing. It's all, obviously it's very different. And so this is what I mean by like the franchise keeps on shifting its tone. And this movie here, judging by the trailers, I was expecting it to be you know, essentially trying to recapture the 2013 feeling of like, okay, this is a very self-serious, like horror, gory, you know, like, you know, very, you know, people getting tortured and body mutilation kind of thing, right? And it does have a lot of that stuff in it. However, every once in a while they do try to sprinkle in a little bit more Sam Raimi isms, you know, like they have the Dead by Dawn, Dead by Dawn, you know, they have like them chanting kind of corny stuff, where the demons are talking as if like, you know, they'll have like what's the best way to say it? I wouldn't say it's one-liners, but you know, the demons will throw like these insults, and they're almost comedic insults at people. You know, like people in the theater were laughing when the demons were saying like just kind of messed up stuff. And it's very different than the 2013 way did it. Whereas this one, it's like this one is still very much more in the horror side of things, but it doesn't entirely take itself seriously. You know, like they even push the envelope a little bit, where it's like they do this they do this thing near the end of the movie where like some of them like fuse together into like just one big mass of arms and limbs and stuff, and it's pretty crazy. However, at the same time, it does feel like they didn't go as, you know, they didn't go as hard with the body horror as the 2013 version did. A good example of this is in the 2013 version, there is a needle that goes in someone's eye, and then that character has to very brutally take the needle out, and it's always like this, oh god, you know, like it's just one of those moments, right, where like the audience is like getting all squirmy because it's just, you know, it's one of those like things you don't want to think about. And this movie has a very similar moment. However, the needle doesn't go in the eye. You know, it's like it like almost goes in there and then it gets stopped. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. They have two, you know, and that's kind of like the defining thing about this movie, is that like this movie does do a lot of crazy stuff, right? But I do feel like if you were to compare it to 2013's Evil Dead, it's not as, you know, hardcore as that one is. It's not as graphic, but it does still have a lot of graphic stuff to it. So it's interesting how they're trying to sort of ride this line between traditional Evil Dead Sam Raimi and, you know, 2013 modern day horror, you know, Evil Dead. So I thought that was really fascinating. And on top of all that, they do some interesting things here where I swear they were about to do some crazy things with the lore, and then they ended up not doing it, or at the very least they didn't like confirm it. So I was like, dang, I thought they were really about to have something here. In this movie, they find a book, obviously, right? And when they're listening to the audio is talking about how like, oh, this is one of 3 books. Which, of course, that's Army of Darkness. That's the name of the movie. Army of Darkness is a big Army of Darkness reference where Ash was supposed to go find one of the books, and then he goes there and like, oh, there's 3 of them, right? But I also thought maybe they were going to maybe infer that this movie, the 2013 remake, and those original movies are all somehow all taking place in the same world because there's 3 books, and that would actually kind of explain a way to do that, right? Now, they didn't actually confirm that that was the case. They didn't actually, like, you know, they didn't like show newspaper clippings of like past events or something. They didn't do anything like that. But the fact that they said this was one of 3, I'm like, okay, they might be, you know, be able to find a way to tie this all in together. Also, this movie does kind of play around with an interesting thing. There is, at the beginning of the movie, there's a sequence where these people are having a demon attack in the woods in a cabin, and then, you know, that's just like a little prologue, and then we don't come back to those characters or that situation until the very end of the movie, where it's revealed that the whole movie is taking place before those events, and the person who was going to that cabin in the woods had already gotten possessed, and that's how those events happen. So we don't actually see the conclusion of that, but it is kind of leaving it like, oh yeah, so you can't actually ever stop the evil. It's just gonna, you know, it's gonna find a way to live on and spread somewhere else, you know? So it's interesting stuff like that. I don't know if that's necessarily a spin-off or anything like that they're gonna come out of this movie with, but, you know, interesting stuff like that does happen. But yeah, I will say the characters in this movie, you know, I do enjoy the family that they introduced. They're all perfectly likable. They're all living in this like truly run down, decrepit building. I don't know if it's supposed to be in New York necessarily. I'm not sure where this is supposed to be. I don't know. It's in some bad part of town, and you can tell that, like, they definitely had a lower budget on this one, but I think it really worked to the advantage of this movie. The fact that, like, everything's being shot almost exclusively in this one hallway, but that actually allowed everything to feel a lot more claustrophobic. And it's like, oh my god, that we are trapped here and we can't even get off this floor of the building. The elevators are broken, the stairs are gone. Like, it makes you just have like this kind of feeling of dread the entire time, because you're like, they could come from anywhere. Like, they have windows open in the back, and I'm like, close those windows. I don't trust any of this. But yeah, having said that about the family and how likable the characters are, pretty much all of them except for 2 get wiped out. So they're gone, they're not coming back for a sequel. But yeah, overall, I will say this was a enjoyable entry in the Evil Dead franchise. And look, this franchise is a strange one in the fact that, like, you had a TV show that connected to the original movies, you had a reboot that was never followed up on, but a lot of people really seem to like it, and now you have this movie where it's like, this doesn't seem to connect in any way to the other ones, and yet Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell are both executive producers on it. So you're like, is this gonna end up maybe going somewhere? Is this like, are they gonna try to tie this into something, or is this entirely its own new thing? Which, that's perfectly fine. But yeah, just Evil Dead is one of those interesting franchises where it's like, you can be full horror, or you can do a horror comedy, or you can try to find some gray area in the middle where you just have a sprinkle of comedy in what is mostly a horror movie. And that's essentially where this one falls. But yeah, they did a great job. They have a lot of spooky moments, and it feels like another win for Evil Dead. I don't know how, I don't know what the predictions of this one are, but I do feel like horror fans and Evil Dead fans are gonna appreciate this one for what it is. And it is like, we're not gonna get our Bruce Campbell, we're not gonna get our our legacy characters to come back and make little cameos, and that's fine, I suppose. It does kind of feel like there is an opportunity here to, like, again, they mentioned the 3 books, and you're kind of like, they could do it if they wanted to. Maybe if this movie makes enough money, they could turn around and be like, hey, actually, all of these movies take place in the same canon, and it all happened, or something like that. I don't know. But in any case, yeah, I enjoyed this. I enjoyed this one a lot. You definitely got the feeling the entire time that, like, I don't know if any of these characters are safe. This movie could, throw a couple of curveballs at me. Also, I want to say there is this really amazing sequence. Speaking of the claustrophobia of it all, there's this sequence where one of the characters is looking through an eye hole in the door, and you're just seeing, like, right in front of the door, just the hallway outside of the apartment building, and you see, like, an entire scene play out where, like, characters are getting killed, and then other characters are showing up with a shotgun, and then they're getting killed by the demons, and it's like, and the camera's just fixed there as you're looking through the islands, and I'm like, that was the perfect way to do this. It's like, you only needed this one hallway, but you made it, like, terrifying that all this stuff is happening literally on the other side of a wooden door. So yeah, they did a really good job on this one. So yeah, Evil Dead Rise. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know how you feel about the Evil Dead franchise overall, and, like, would you prefer this franchise to just continue doing sort of self-contained things? It's not this big interconnected thing. This is not, it's not Star Wars, it's not the MCU, so they don't have to do the cameos. They don't have to say that all 3 of the books are in the same world or something like that. But they could, but they haven't. So, like, let me know what you guys feel about that. Like would that kind of ruin something if they did try to put more interconnectivity into all this? Or You know what I mean? Like, or would that make it more exciting? Would you be like, oh yeah, someone from one of the other movies is going to show up any second now? Or is that just kind of not what this is? You know, would you rather this just be like, no, we'll leave it this secluded group, any of them could die, who knows who the main character even is right now, you know? So anyways, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.